Hello and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan, and on this show, my guests and I unpack the stories that shape us and the lives that we lead on our path to self-mastery. So, let's not wait any longer. Let the games begin. Hey, Serban, thank you for joining the show. Welcome. How you doing, man?
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you reaching out. I know we connected through a podcast matchmaking service in a sense. And I was telling you right before we hit record that I think there's a lot that we're going to be able to talk about because we both have just this deep, passionate, I guess almost nerdiness when it comes to mindset and really the way that we as people kind of tick. But one thing that I appreciate about having somebody like yourself on here is that you're not natively from the U.S., and I know that there are a lot of times that I have guests that are on that we just get used to certain ways that we do things and how we kind of had to work through things through life. Now, I don't want to take your story away or your thunder away from any of this. So, man, why don't you give us a little bit of context? Tell us what you do for a living and maybe one thing that most people don't know about you that's a little odd or bizarre.
Sure. I work right now, my 9 to 5 is a program manager for a semiconductor company. However, the rest of the time I'm a professional speaker, I'm a motivational coach, and I look to help as many people as I can with, like you said, the mindset stuff. And it's good that you mentioned that I have a funny accent, is because I came to the United States 2005, and culturally I was told from the beginning that I must follow this particular footprint. You must go to school, you must get your corporate job, you must do all of these things. And I tell you, Nick, for the first 8 years of my life, 10 years in my America life, that's what I did. I just followed the blueprint, and I found myself after, I think it was 2013. You know, I did the American dream. I came here, I worked really hard, got my diploma, check. I got the corporate 9 to 5 job, check. I got my 401k, check. Then I said, well, I'm going to start living and going to parties and all of these things. And all of a sudden, as I kept not growing anymore, I just started, there's that saying, if you don't progress, you regress. That's how it felt. It just... I didn't feel whole. And I tell you, there's one instance where I met with a friend and haven't seen him in a few years. And we sit down and he's genuinely happy to see me, interested. He's like, how you doing? How's it going? And that question, I don't know, at that moment just hit me hard because I was fine. Had the job, fine. Had the house, fine. Had my relationships were fine. Nothing was great. They were just something lacking, and that's where I struggled a lot. And that's what one of the reasons why, as I got more and more desperate of not knowing exactly what to do with my life, that's what set me on this path of, as your show it is, a mindset path.
So what's the weird thing or the odd thing that people don't know about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. One odd thing, Nick, is in 4th grade, we were talking before the recording, strange things that happened to us in childhood. In 4th grade, I was reading along with the people in class. We were going around the class and we were supposed to read from a book, and I misread something. And, the kids in the classroom just started giggling and everything. And to make things worse, my teacher decided that it would be very appropriate to make fun of me, which made all the other kids laugh even harder. And I got super embarrassed. And from that point, I can tell you that I have not read a book since that 4th grade. Only the ones that I had to for school, none whatsoever, until I found the mindset.
Man, that's interesting. It's funny. I've joked with people that I hated to read, I didn't even like reading captions on the TV. Like I didn't want to read any of it at all. And I know 100% it was because we were forced to do something. And if you're forced to do something, you're like, well, nope, makes me want to not do it even more now. And now I find myself basically have 6 to 8 books going at a time, a couple daily reads and others that are kind of, the ones that I'm working through. But that's interesting. And especially for you to be able to be in that spot and now be in a different country with a different language and being able to read things in not your native language. So are you now one of those types of people where, similar to me, where you've got a bunch of books all at a time, or do you kind of move through them one by one?
I do have a library of books at the moment, but I try to read them one by one, and I'm because again, lacking the skill of reading for so many years, I'm very slow. But I know it's a skill that I can develop. I had a fixed mindset prior to starting to read, and of course, it's also the fact that you have to find the books that really intrigue you, right? And once I started finding the books that really made me light up when I was reading them, it was a different way of reading. But I had that thing where you have, oh, I want that one, and someone tells you about another book and you start picking that up, and I had 3 or 4 at the same time, and I find it very difficult to finish them just because of my inability to read fast. So now I'm going very methodical one by one.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's not a race in that sort of way. I used to find myself being really jealous of people that could just rip through books. But then I thought about it and I was like, you're ripping through that. Did you learn anything? Like a couple things like that you didn't read in like the synopsis of it or like on the back page. And some people just will kind of do things like that just to check it off the box. Sort of like what you were doing where you said you came over and you went after that American dream to check off those boxes, and keep going, thinking that happiness is on the other side of another one of those boxes. So now that you understand that it's not all built in that, how does life kind of look different than it did before? And especially being here in the States. Like, actually, on that note, I want to jump to that. Like, getting here to the States, what was the idea to come over here for? What was the plan of like, I'm going to get here and I'm going to do these things, and that journey to be able to get here? Because that in and of itself is a typical journey that most of us here in the States don't ever go through. Maybe we'll move to a different state within the continental US, but not have to go different countries and, learn a new language and all of that. So tell us a bit about that story getting over here.
Yeah, I think perspective has a lot to do with many of the things that we do. And when I came in 2005, my plan was to work for a few months and then go back home. But then working a minimum wage job for 3 months, or actually for the first month, once I got that paycheck and I realized that my paycheck is as much as I would make in a year in Romania, I was like, wow, this is the land of opportunities. So it was, growing up, we didn't have as a family a lot of money. So looking at it from that perspective, I thought, man, this is so much that I can do here than I couldn't do back home, which made me want to really make my home here in the United States. The transition, I can tell you that there's, as an immigrant, you go through these phases where you feel like home is home, and you're here, but you're just working because you want to get home. But then when you go home, the first time I went, I felt like an alien there, and it was this struggle between where am I, which one is my home, and I had to really make a commitment and decide that I want to stay here because this is where I can make a better life for myself and my family.
Man, how did you manage your mindset throughout that feeling of my home isn't my home anymore? My home is now somewhere else.
It was a lot of trepidation because I had so many friends back home that I was keeping in touch with, and I wanted that belonging, and I was making friends here, but didn't feel the same because friends from back home I knew for, I don't even know, some of them I knew for 20 years. But then, you kind of have to make a decision. You the staying in limbo is just detrimental to anybody. You're better off running in one direction 100 miles than standing still at the intersection, because at least when you run one direction, hey, I'm actually running the wrong way. I can turn around and take another path. But if you're just standing still at the intersection, you still don't know. And that's pretty much what happened. At one point, I just settled. I said, I'll make here my home. And if in 10 years I feel different, then I can always go back home. But I never looked back. It was a good decision.
Yeah, it sounds like it has been. But it also sounds like your mindset was starting to head in that direction. Like even just getting over to a new country, even as somebody who visits a different country, that's still kind of atypical than what most people experience. Like I've been overseas a couple times, and I've had conversations with people that are like, "Oh man, I've never," or "I couldn't imagine," or anything like that. So even just to take that step outside of your comfort zone to come over here and start to do these things, and then for you to get to a point where you're like, no matter what, if I was there, if I'm here, wherever I'm at, I'm still with me, but I'm still not happy. So how did you get onto that path of going, all right, well, I need to do something different, and starting to work on yourself?
Yeah, I think in many cases, what drives us the most is a desire. And depending on where you are in your seasons of life, your desire, if it's strong enough, you will persist and go one direction or another. And when I moved to the United States, my mindset was more of a desire to amass wealth because of a deficiency that I had back home, where I had no money. And coming here, money drove me for a really long time. Like I said, all those boxes were driven by my lack of money, my not having enough money to go to a restaurant back home. And coming here, that desire of making sure that I have that draw of money, that was the one that drove me for a really long time, until it didn't.
Can you look back at that moment and kind of pinpoint when that happened, when you were like, oh, these paychecks aren't making me super excited anymore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely was when, and I think it's been said a lot, right? That there's a plateau at 75,000. I think it's for Americans, where money is no longer bringing us happiness, and I literally hit that number, and I felt like I had everything. I didn't need to do anything else, and the only thing I had to do is party and feel good and be happy. And come to realize that the more I just stand still, the more I was unhappy. And I just, a pit was forming inside of me, where I was wondering what else is there to life. What is my next season? What do I need to do? And that frustration just constantly built up more and more, where the money was no longer there, and I didn't even know what else was out there, because up until that point, it's that blueprint that I was talking about at the beginning. Is my parents told me, hey, you got to get that 401k, and you gotta have a steady job, but they haven't said anything. What are we doing afterwards? Once we hit that social blueprint and we check all those boxes, what's next? And that's where passion, a calling, a purpose, living a more fulfilling life. That's where I feel like it's not being talked a lot about those type of seasons in our lives. And that's where I ended up.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot when you get to that point where you go, well, there's got to be more to it. Because I think a lot of people get to that point in life And yeah, I've heard the same thing. It's like 70 grand or 75. You get over that and it's a different appetite. And I've experienced that as well. I've experienced different levels of that where you experience things. And one of my friends said it best. He was like, you make loads of money, but what the fuck? You going to buy another shirt? I was like, that's a solid point. Like, yeah, what are you going to buy another shirt? But when you think about being in that spot where a lot of people get to and they go, I've got the things, I got the house, I got the wife, I got the kids, I got the whatever it looks like, but they're still not satisfied or they're still not being fulfilled. That is just the tip of the iceberg to start to look at what is fulfilling, what your purpose could be. And I think a lot of people get honestly fucking terrified because they don't know. And they've built up all this stuff behind them saying, well, this is who I am. I've gone to school for this. I've done this thing. And this is who I've made myself to be. And sometimes it takes you shifting and becoming somebody different. So in that spot, when you got to that point, and I know it wasn't a 1 day or 2 day thing, but over that course of time and being able to look back at it now, what sort of advice would you give to somebody that's kind of in that spot right now where they feel like they're close to that?
Yeah, there, and like you said, it wasn't a one moment thing. It was just a continuous buildup of something has to change. I cannot go on like this. And the biggest struggle that I had is that I was constantly looking on the outside. You know, I had my parents who told me, I had society who told me what I should be doing, and I was still looking for the answer from the outside. What's my passion? How do I develop this? And it took me a long time to understand that we have to look inwards, right? It's inside of us, but we are so distracted with social media and all these different posts and all the distractions with sports and everything that's happening outside of us that we don't even realize that we must pause and take a second and look inside. And I don't know about you, Nick, but the first time I did it, it was very uncomfortable to stay alone with my thoughts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's not a happy place to be for the most point. It's funny. I have this conversation different times with clients, with friends, with guests, and there's so many things that pop up. I'm not going to lie to you, man. While we're on this, there was literally a squirrel that ran up the tree that's right outside my window, and my dumbass self just went, huh, and looked right over. First thought I had was, oh, my ADD kicked in and went, oh, look, squirrel. But being able to catch yourself and pull yourself back, where I say that because it literally happened, but also jokingly, where we have so many different things that pull at us all the time. And I think we also enjoy that pull. You enjoy the notifications on your phone. You enjoy looking at Facebook or IG or whatever and kind of getting those dopamine hits. But we also enjoy not sitting in the shit and working through the shit. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with people that have done that work. And it was because of what happened in 2020 with COVID and being stuck in a house and just being forced to sit in a room by yourself or with a spouse or whatever. I think you and I both understand that it is like a muscle where once you start to work on it, it becomes easier to do, but it's still not always a pleasant experience. So when you're in that spot, even now when you're in that spot and you're about to work through something that's not super pleasant, how do you keep yourself from getting distracted without throwing your phone out the window?
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Because sitting in the discomfort is uncomfortable, right? And at first, you know, whenever I look to meditate, right? The best way to just close your eyes and just let your thoughts go. And I really thought that meditation is just some woo-woo thing, and it was difficult just to stand still for 5 minutes, and that's the biggest challenge that we have at the beginning of this becoming more self-aware of what we want for ourselves, not what others want from us, is to understand that there's that paintball just running around your head, and you have to kind of let it be and sit with it for some time. And you said it well. It's a muscle. You have to train to just observe the ball just rattling inside your brain. And the more you do, you'll notice that it's going to slow down and it's going to get a little more observable. And the more you do it, the more you're going to be able to recognize the thoughts that you're having. And there's, there's so much of this negative shit that goes up in there that it's drowning anything positive. It truly is, because our primordial instinct is always to go negative, negative, negative. And the more you pay attention, the more you practice being aware and understanding your thoughts, the more you're going to be able to recognize the negative shit, toss that to the side, and just observe of the things and ask, I don't know, ask the universe, ask yourself, just ask that question, what do I want? And the more you ask it and the more you're able to eliminate the negative, the subconscious can help itself, right? It's going to look to answer for that question. And that's when you start finding the things that really excite you, the things that would have the potential to be a passion.
Yeah. As cliche as it is, the answers are within. We've all heard it. Most of us have said it at some point. But most people don't live it all the time. Now, look, perfection is not a thing that I think any of us can achieve. And I know that I don't live it all the time. And there are certain things that'll pop up where just to be able to be aware of that, hold it, and then move it in and of itself takes a lot of work to be able to form the muscle to be able to do it. And I think that awareness is the key thing that you brought up. Because once you're aware of it, you can do something with it. If you're not aware of it, then you're just literally being reactive to everything. Now, I think some of that may have come from, and this is a little bit of an assumption, but a setup for the next bit. A little bit of that has come from you being a project manager and working on larger projects with tons of pieces and different departments and all of that. So do you kind of incorporate how you work throughout the day as also how you work throughout your life?
Yeah, I definitely have. I have so many systems in place that I think they make me successful. And I'm always fascinated people who don't have any plans in their life and they just do things as they come. To me, that just sounds stressful, and just like having a budget, it really helps you stay organized and not stress out when you run out of money, right? And planning and being organized in everything, I think it has so much value. And this is, I think it's spilled from my career into my personal life, where now I do have speaking Sundays or recording Saturdays or any kind of activity that I do. I'm very structured with it because I think you're like me, Nick, that we work better when we have consistent habits. And that's exactly what project management has done for me, is like just stay consistent, stay on track, and try to have those routines scheduled.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think there are certain times where people will kind of push away from that because that's not who they are. They want to flow. And I'm one of those people where I really enjoy the flow and be able to move throughout things. And then there are others that they have to live by the guidelines that they set. Like the day goes like this. If it goes some other way, then all craziness happens. So there's got to be balance to it. You've got to have a little bit of both. Somebody said a while back about being proactively lazy, and that just stuck with me. Because if you think, like, even in the morning, you're like, all right, well, I've got to get gym clothes and all of that. If you do it the night before and you're proactively lazy, that can be part of a routine or whatever that looks like. So I find that, at least for me, I have chunks in the morning and the afternoon, or the morning and the evening, where there are specific things that I get done within those times and allow myself sort of the bumpers through the day to be able to move and play along with the magic that shows up throughout the day and be intentionally reactive with certain things. But having those times that you work through is a key thing. So when you think about the project management side that you have and the systems that you've put into place, can you look back, let's say a couple years, and see the progress that you've had because of those systems? And are there any that really stand out to you where you're like, man, if I didn't have this fucking thing, I'd be an absolute mess right now?
Not even project management related, just in general in life. I remember liking to work out, and that was the thing that I was doing in the morning, on a regular basis. But what I've managed to do now, I have a whole routine in the morning that I do because of my working out. And I think James Clear said this in Atomic Habits, right? Where you tack on to an existing habit, another habit. So let's say that you're brushing your teeth every night. You just listen to a podcast while you're brushing your teeth. There would be a tack on habit. And those were the things that really helped me just be more mindful and more intentional with the things that really helped me grow. So I was fairly consistent working out. But then in the morning now, before I work out, I must write 3 things that I'm grateful for throughout the day. That's, for me, it's a way to prime my mind. It's something that I've been doing for the last 5 years, and I probably don't even realize how much value that is, because the first thing that we do when we wake up is like, oh, what do I have to do? Oh shit, I have to take care of that problem. Oh, all these negative thoughts just quickly zoom into our minds, and that carries throughout the day. So the one thing that I know I did, and which was very, very beneficial for me, is just do those 3 things that I'm grateful for in the morning, and then three main goals that I'm supposed to achieve throughout the day, and then go work out. And after a while, that once that habit formed, then I'm like, well, let me see if I can meditate for 5 minutes after my workout. Well, I don't really like meditating, but I like the sauna, so I went into the sauna, and I can't take my headphones because it gets too hot. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll meditate. And I started off with 5 minutes, and it was uncomfortable, and then I bumped it up to 10 minutes, and now I'm at 15 minutes. But those type of systems where you have one main thing that you do and then you tack on a few things, for me, it was instrumental to just have better habits and just be more successful on the things that really make me feel more alive. I don't know, make me feel happier. The working out, it's crucial for me. I feel like just getting that out of the way the first thing in the morning, it just pumps me up, and it just feels great. And then you have the other things that are adjacent to it.
A good point about the habit stacking and being able to take upon something you're already doing and just add something to it, and then adding the reward to it. What a great book. The concepts in there that are almost stupidly simple. Like, think about it. As you read through it, at least I did this, where I was like, duh, yep, makes a ton of sense. I do some of that, or I don't do some of that. And then being able to kind of add those things on. I think in certain ways, it's fun to play the game, play the game of life, where you go, well, I don't like to do this thing, but it's good for me. So how do I do it? And how do I do something along with that, like you'd said with the sauna, where you're like, well, can't bring my headphones in. I guess I can incorporate this bit to it. And in some ways kind of nerd out about that. And that's a fun thing to be able to experience, because everybody's a bit different when it comes to that, but still being able to use that principle of how do you kind of keep stacking to it without driving yourself crazy. And I'm glad that you also brought up meditating 5, 10, 15 minutes. At first, you started to almost say 5 years. And that's how long it kind of has at least taken me to get to the point where I can do a couple of minutes and be consistent with it. There are times where, man, I'm sure you can attest, where you sit down and you're like, I'm just going to meditate, thought, and it's just constant. But being able to continue to work that. Now, do you find that you give yourself grace when you miss a day? Or are you so project oriented and so into your systems where you beat the shit out of yourself for it?
That's a very good question, because I used to do that. Yeah, I used to be, because of all the habit stacking that I've done, I had a crap list of items that I wanted to get throughout the day, and I felt like I I had to do it. And for the longest time, it was actually starting to stress me out because I haven't checked the list. And I think it was only a year ago where I moved it from I have to, no, I don't have to, I want to, whenever I can. So if you're right, if I miss a day or two now, I don't beat myself up. And all of this stuff, if it doesn't give you energy, if it doesn't give you pleasure, you shouldn't be doing it. Of course, at first it's a little bit of uncomfortableness, but my wife, for example, she doesn't like meditating. She goes into the sauna and just looks around and just sits there. She's not a big meditator, and everybody's different, and we have to do things that we enjoy, right? And this pressure of staying consistent, there's a point, there's a limit to it. That's a good question that you have, yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely balance to it, no matter what. And understanding that different people are different. So, man, I appreciate that you've been on and that we've gone through a lot of this stuff so far. So, what's that one piece of advice you'd give to somebody that's on their path towards self-mastery?
I would say don't beat yourself up. Don't think that everything has to change tomorrow. All of the things that we're doing, it's been baby steps at first, and this is kind of like, your New Year resolution. You're saying, starting January 1st, I'm going to go to the gym and work out 5 times a day, and I'm going to eat only salad, and I'm not going to drink any alcohol. That's not a way to do it. Anything that you want, start slow. Like you said, just try to incorporate it slowly into your routine, and don't beat yourself up, because a lot of times, because food is a very easy example, right? You stay off and you don't eat crappy food for a week, and then you let yourself go in a weekend, and you're like, well, everything's gone to hell now. I'm gonna go to the buffet tomorrow. No, it's okay. Just start slow and just be consistent. I think my superpower is consistency, and there's that saying, right? 1% better each day. If we just apply that in 10 years, it's incredible what we can achieve.
Yeah, great point. That incremental growth. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. Again, I appreciate you opening up and going through everything. Tell us, where can people find you and where can they connect with you? Yeah,
awesome discussion, Nick. Thank you. They can find me on Instagram, is the best place. My name, Serban Mare. That's my handle. I try to put wisdoms, some quick reels, something that I've learned and I am applying in my life, and I've tried to share as much wisdom with others that I can. So that's the best place.
Awesome. And all that will be in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, same here. Thank you very much for having me.
Another great conversation on today's episode of the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. So, what did you think of the show today? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and check out the Instagram or Facebook page to join the conversation. If you enjoyed the episode, please jump over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. It helps us be found and helps others be healed. If this episode opened your eyes, made you think, or smile at all, then I'm sure it'll do the same for your friends. And check out the show notes for more info from today's episode, and check out other episodes on the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show.com, as well as our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and look up the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. Thanks again to our incredible guests for being real, honest, and vulnerable with us today. And I'd like to thank our sponsors. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Your support means the world to us. And with that, remember, your mindset matters, and so do you.